Well, hello everyone. It's Marcia Sinetar again. I'm so excited for you to hear this interview. This interview was made around 1998 or 9, not even the year 2000. And the reason I'm excited for you to hear it is, first of all, it could have been made yesterday. It is so timely. I'm shocked, really. Many of the things that I heard, even the references, are as if it was made a day ago. That's number one. Secondly, as I listened, I got encouraged, which just tickles me because sometimes I can be, like everyone, bogged down in work and chores and bills and all of this kind of stuff, so extraneous to what's really important. But as I listened to this, I was thinking, that's right. I should remember that. I almost started taking notes, so I hope you'll take notes. That's the second thing. The third thing is that referencing back to a recent interview that we've posted on the archive, I think it's called Being Present. In that archived interview, I talk about the non-textbook, give-and-take, spontaneous enjoyment of a conversation with people that we are talking with, whether it's a parent, whether it's a friend, a business associate, and also that in these spontaneous conversations, very often we interrupt each other. So on this interview, you're going to hear that modeled for you, I think. I certainly heard it. In the beginning, the two of us who don't know each other were kind of stiff, at least that's how I heard it. As we get going, you're going to hear us interrupting each other, not because we're not listening, but because we're listening and we're resonating with what the other person has said, chiming in, wanting to share our 2 cents. It's really that give and take of enjoying the other person and being with that other person. So I hope you hear that. Good listening and be well. Thank you.
Good evening, New England. This is Karen Steele on WALE. I am really delighted tonight to have as my guest Dr. Marcia Sinetar, the author of a new bestseller called To Build the Life You Want, Create the Work You Love, and it's subtitled The Spiritual Dimension of Entrepreneuring. This is a great book. It's a sequel to a book that I bet you've heard about or possibly read. The million-copy bestseller of Dr. Sinetar is called Do What You Love, The Money Will Follow. What a catchy title. Sure caught my attention a few years ago. Dr. Sinetar is also the author of a number of other books in this area, but it's primarily her new book that we'll be focusing on tonight, although to do that we can't help but talk about the previous one. The main premise of Dr. Sinetar's book is that authentic occupational success is tied to healthy human development and spiritual growth. So it's a spiritual kind of book, but it's also a very practical book. Dr. Sinetar, could you start this evening by giving us some background, like your inspiration for your first book and what led you to write the second one?
Sure. Well, first of all, it's a pleasure to be with you.
Well, glad to have you.
Thank you. And I guess the first book I was writing as I was solving the problems of my own work, I had left public sector work. I was a school principal and before that a teacher. Mm-hmm. And I wanted to go out on my own, which I eventually did. And I guess the do what you love was my way of encouraging myself, because I didn't know very many people at the time who were leaving secure 9-to-5 jobs. Okay, and then as it's turned out, over the last many years, what seemed a luxury at the time is now almost a necessity.
Those skills, you mean?
Because corporations are downsizing so quickly.
Exactly.
And we're moving into a kind of global environment where our security really does come from expertise in a profession, but not necessarily to a 9-to-5 job.
That's true. That's true. So you wrote the original one to kind of encourage yourself, and, well, you must have encouraged yourself real well, because when I read the book, I found it very helpful. And it sold very well.
Yes, it sold very well. I'm not really sure about this 1 million copies. I think it's close to that. But anyway,
it certainly sounds reasonable.
Yeah.
Now, what was just briefly, because we really want to focus on your second book tonight, but to do that, to really understand where you're coming from, I think on the second book, you kind of need to know what you were talking about in the first book, because it's not. I think what probably catches the title is wonderful, because it's very eye-catching. Do what you love, the money will follow. I'm sure a lot of people grabbed it off the shelf, going, "Oh, well, I love to fish, so."
Right.
Yeah. But
well, I think what I've been dealing with all these years is a study of what we would call vocation. Mm-hmm. So in a vocation, we have something different than just a job. You can think of a job as a series of tasks, okay, and you can think of a career as maybe a climb up a ladder of responsibility. But a vocation is really, in the old-fashioned sense, of a sort of calling. So we feel ourselves summoned to a particular line of work. Now, it might not be a hobby. It might, for example, be something that we do very well, or something that fascinates us.
Or gives us a lot of pleasure to do, right?
Or pleasure to do, or a question that we have. For example, in the new work, I look at some of these questions. I think it was the founder of Federal Express that for years had wondered what it would take to run a first-class postal delivery service.
Did he write a paper or something on that in college?
Yes, he did, and I think that sort of launched the endeavor. In my own case, when I was a child, I used to wonder, what will it take for a human being? What would it take for a human being to live a creative, self-expressive life?
Right.
And looking around me at the adults around me at the time, I saw some that managed it and most that didn't. So
I don't think I grew up with any. In fact, I'm 40 now, and when I grew up in the 50s, it was basically the Beaver Cleaver kind of look anyway,
right,
where Dad went off to work and it was his job to provide for the family, and this deal of liking your job was not an issue. Although my dad happened to love what he did when he was a sales rep, but that wasn't the main thing. The main thing was bringing home the bacon and that kind of thing. There wasn't. But I really like what you said, the term that you used about it being a calling, because I think that's just perfect wording for when we talk about a vocation. I tend to think of people who are drawn to the ministry or something like that.
Right.
But really,
when you look at successful people, you see that same evangelism.
See, that's how I feel about my own work.
That's
exactly
right. And I think that's the way, and when I talk about entrepreneurs, I should back up and say I'm really giving examples of effective entrepreneurs, people who really do have that enthusiasm, but the practical know-how to make it work, to make the venture work.
Right, and it is more than just seizing on something that seems fun. I know I have a friend that's been a good friend of mine. We went to junior high together. I've known her for more years than I care to count. And she has had one business idea in the last 25 years. She's had 3,000, and I'm not exaggerating. I mean,
right,
it's gotten to be, okay, what's the deal this week?
Right.
Okay. And the thing is it looks to her that what I've done, which is really taken an extreme amount of effort and work and love. I put a lot of myself into my businesses.
Yeah.
I have several. But looks like that I just thought it just happened, And so to her, she'll have one idea, but the moment she runs into an obstacle, no matter what it is, it's something else.
Well, I think that speaks to the point that I wanted to make about business, about starting a business. It certainly does take more than a good idea to stay afloat.
Oh, yes.
Like you say, it takes all your waking hours and maybe even some of your sleeping hours.
A lot of mine.
A lot of mine. And really, when we look at the track record, I think it's something like 700,000 new businesses start every year now, or more, but only 1 in 20 are in business in 5 years.
Right. It's very low, right.
It's very low. So what I tried to do, and what I try to do in all of the work, is to build these models. They're really stories of and of ordinary people, not necessarily the Donald Trumps of the world, but ordinary people who make their ventures work. And then I'm saying to the reader, look, let's take a look at why it works. What are the traits that they have in common? And so that's where I came out on this book, because so many people wrote after the Do What You Love, and they
That's
said,
what I wanted to ask you, yes. I'm
well,
sure
they said,
saying,
you know,
okay, this is great, but what now?
well, they said, this is great, but how do I go from A to Z? How do I go from the idea to the inception and implementation of a business? And I thought, well, wait a minute, business schools are teaching this, aren't they? But what I didn't realize was that they really don't teach, and maybe nobody can, the inner work.
Well, I personally think you've done a very good job. As an MBA, I can guarantee you they don't teach us this.
No, right.
And, or anything close.
No.
And, well, I think you talk about that in your new book. You talk about the traits, and I really want to get into that because I think it's very fascinating, the 6 or 7 traits that successful entrepreneurs have. And you make a very encouraging point, I think, and that is that these can be developed. It's not you're born with it or that or not. That if you're really committed, you can do these things, and you have a lot of exercises and things to do that.
Well, let me give you another example other than what I have in the book, even though I mentioned this example in the book. We know that it can be developed, but we also know, to your point, that necessity sometimes forces our hand. When we look at refugees that come over here from other countries, I know this is a bane of existence of many small business people in America, because the refugee that comes over here, maybe the boat people, for example, they do manage one way or another to get it together.
That's a very good point.
You see, and they don't have an MBA,
right?
And they don't have the political connections. My own family came from Europe, and for most of my life, although they spoke English beautifully, they thought in the language of their ancestors. Mm-hmm. You know, they calculated in their home language. Mm-hmm. So people that come over from a foreign country don't even have the advantage of language. And yet we, from our pampered, in a sense, existences, you know, with TVs and cars and Walkmans and so forth, we think that we have to take a course for everything.
That's a very good point, and the work ethic is different. People like that. I used to be, well, I am a CPA by training. That's not what I do. I don't actively practice. I'm involved in educational services for CPAs. But one of the things that I did one time was, in my quest for what I was good at and what I really enjoyed, was I helped people buy and sell businesses. And many of them were either who wanted to buy or sell a business for foreign folks. Mm-hmm. And it just amazed me. I mean, they would work. The work ethic was just unbelievable. I mean, it was like whatever it takes.
Right, whatever it takes.
Some of that's necessity. I mean, obviously, and not all of that is love for the business, but they have a different work ethic.
Well, if we combine, this is what I wanted to say, to your point about development, if we can combine the passion of our lives with the necessity to make $1, which all of us have to do, mm-hmm. then I think we have the proper motivation. If we're only motivated by money, then the joy is sort of washed out of our out of our life. And if we're only motivated by love, sometimes we don't have enough of the money piece of it. So you really do need a kind of practical love for the thing you're going to do. And the other point that I want to make before we get too far into this is that I've defined entrepreneur as simply a resourceful, responsive person. You know, somebody who can meet the demands of a moment, and not necessarily somebody who owns their own business. Because many people don't want to have their own business.
That's true. And it's a big responsibility.
That's right. And it's not necessary. When we think of ourselves as being entrepreneurs, we could conceivably be just simply responsible, very, very inventive types who work for a larger corporation.
My brother is a kind of a good example of that. He's an engineer, a civil engineer.
Yes.
Works for a large company and a large engineering firm in Albuquerque. Loves what he does.
Right.
Lives for it. The same kind of thing. Because he gets a lot back, a lot of creative, he gets to express creative things through that, and he just loves it.
And while I'm not selling anything, I'm not trying to convince anybody to change, especially if they're happy doing what they're doing. I will say that the research shows that by the turn of the century, if we want to be employable wherever, we're going to have to show our employer that we are able to solve problems of a novel sort, or get along with people that we've never met before, or respond to technology. So we're all going to be more entrepreneurial, whether we want to be or not.
And that just reflects the changing society, and I think you talk about the 21st century thinking,
right?
Kind of thing, and it
right.
is very different from what you call the 20th century thinking, which I understand the static, the kind of we've always done it this way. So
kind of an Archie Bunker,
Right.
And
if it's not broke, why fix it?
That's right. And we see I think we see the death pangs of this right now because you see the polarization of society in certain ways. At the same time, everything is going into cyberspace, if you know what I mean.
Yes.
So we have all of this happening at one time, and it's very confusing. But those of us, I think, that have a creative bent can step back and say, all right, in the long run, this is going to reconcile itself. And that's the thinking that I think we have to adopt. We have to kind of step back, be objective, and say, all right, let's look long-term at career, relationship, saving money, preparing, and so forth.
And, that may sound, it may sound, well, let me just put it this way. It does sound much more simple than it is because we are in a time of unprecedented change, I think.
Right.
And so what you're talking about doing that, it is scary. There are so many technological things changing all at once, like no other time in history.
Right.
And so when people, they're frozen.
Exactly.
I consider myself fairly well-read and keeping up with things, and I could find myself overwhelmed.
Well, that's the starting point that I think I would make, where people say to me today, how do I begin to go about this shift? I would say the first thing is to gain a base of stabilization. So wherever we are, let's say we've just gotten a pink slip, or we just graduated from school, or we're just retiring. Wherever we are, I would say the first order of business is to step back and get stable, centered, grounded. And then everything starts to fall into its place.
Well, and that's an excellent point, because that goes to your point in your book, in your new book about waiting and listening to yourself.
Right.
This is Karen Steele on WALE. My guest this evening is Dr. Marcia Sinetar, the author of To Build the Life You Want, Create the Work You Love. We're going to take a short break, and we'll be right back.